The atmosphere on the set of The View felt tense long before the cameras officially rolled, with subtle glances exchanged among the hosts as Michael J. Fox took his seat. What was expected to be a reflective conversation about legacy, resilience, and advocacy slowly shifted in tone as questions became sharper, more personal, and increasingly uncomfortable. The audience sensed something brewing beneath Fox's calm exterior, a quiet strain that hinted at deeper frustration waiting to surface. As the interview progressed, the discussion veered away from Fox's decades of activism and into speculative commentary about his public appearances. While Fox initially responded with grace, his bodied language told another story, hands tightening, pauses growing longer, and a visible effort to remain composed. The studio lighting felt harsher as the questions lingered, and viewers could feel the emotional weight pressing down on him. One particular remark seemed to strike a nerve, framed as concern but carrying an edge that felt dismissive of Fox's lived experience. He leaned forward slightly, eyes focused, and for the first time interrupted to clarify his position. His voice remained steady, yet there was an unmistakable firmness, as if he were drawing a boundary that had long been crossed in public discourse. Fox spoke about dignity, about the difference between curiosity and exploitation, and about how easily narratives are shaped without consent. The room grew quieter, the audience listening more intently as he explained that living with a condition does not make one a public object. His words carried the weight of years spent navigating misunderstanding, misrepresentation, and unsolicited judgment. The hosts attempted to steer the conversation back, but the shift had already happened. Fox continued, emphasizing that advocacy should empower rather than reduce people to symbols. His tone sharpened, not with anger, but with resolve, as he challenged the idea that inspiration must come packaged with personal intrusion. The cameras captured every nuance, turning the moment into something far more raw than planned. What followed was not an eruption of rage, but of honesty. Fox described how interviews often claim empathy while quietly reinforcing stereotypes. He acknowledged the good intentions behind many questions, yet firmly rejected the assumption that his life was an open book for analysis. The audience responded with murmurs of agreement, sensing the authenticity behind his words. One host pushed back gently, suggesting the questions came from public curiosity. Fox nodded, then countered that curiosity does not outweigh respect. He explained that awareness loses meaning when it ignores humanity, and that conversations should evolve alongside understanding. His message was clear, not accusatory, but unapologetically direct. The tension in the studio became palpable, a rare moment where polished television gave way to unfiltered truth. Fox's expression softened briefly as he acknowledged supporters who truly listen. Then he returned to his point, stressing that progress depends on asking better questions, not louder ones. The silence that followed spoke volumes. Viewers later described the moment as uncomfortable yet necessary. Fox was not attacking anyone, but defending a principle. He reminded everyone that living visibly does not mean living without boundaries. The authenticity of his response cut through the performative nature of daytime television, creating a moment that felt both intimate and confrontational. As the hosts attempted to regain rhythm, the dynamic had undeniably shifted. The interview was no longer about promotion or nostalgia, but about agency. Fox sat back, breathing evenly, having said what he felt needed to be said. The audience applauded, not loudly, but with sincerity, acknowledging the courage it takes to speak plainly in a controlled environment. Social media would later seize on clips of the exchange, labeling it an outburst. Though many viewers disagreed, they saw not anger, but accumulated fatigue finally given voice. Fox had not raised his volume, only his expectations for how conversations around disability and public life should be handled. Behind the scenes, producers debated how much of the exchange would air unedited. The rawness of the moment challenged the usual formulas of daytime talk shows, yet cutting it risked undermining the very message Fox delivered, one about authenticity over comfort. The decision ultimately reflected the growing appetite for real, unscripted dialogue. Fox later clarified that his intention was never to cause conflict, but to correct course. He expressed appreciation for platforms that allow meaningful discussion, while urging them to evolve. His comments resonated beyond the studio, sparking broader conversations about media responsibility and respectful storytelling. Fans praised his composure, noting how he transformed an awkward moment into a teaching one. Rather than retreat, he leaned into discomfort, using it to articulate a perspective rarely centered on mainstream television. The exchange became a reference point for how public figures can reclaim narratives without hostility. Critics, however, framed the moment as unnecessary tension, arguing that talk shows thrive on probing questions. Fox's supporters countered that probing should never mean prying. The debate highlighted a cultural shift, where audiences increasingly value empathy over spectacle, and depth over drama. What made the moment compelling was its relatability. Many viewers recognized the feeling of being spoken about rather than spoken with. Fox's words echoed the frustrations of countless individuals whose identities are often simplified for consumption. In that sense, the interview transcended celebrity and touched something universal. The hosts eventually thanked Fox for his honesty, acknowledging the importance of reflection. While the energy never fully returned to its earlier lightness, the remainder of the interview carried a more thoughtful tone. Questions became measured, answers more deliberate, and the audience remained engaged. Fox closed by reiterating his commitment to advocacy rooted in respect. He reminded viewers that progress is not just about visibility, but about listening. His final remarks were calm, hopeful, and forward-looking, leaving the audience with something to consider long after the cameras stopped rolling. In the days that followed, the clip circulated widely, interpreted through countless lenses. Some saw confrontation, others saw courage. What remained undeniable was the impact. Fox had shifted the conversation, even briefly, in a space not designed for depth. Media analysts noted how the moment exposed the limits of traditional interview formats. When guests bring lived experience, surface-level questions can feel inadequate. Fox's response challenged broadcasters to rethink how they engage with stories rooted in real struggle. Support poured in from fellow advocates and public figures, many sharing similar experiences of being misunderstood on air. Fox's moment became a catalyst, encouraging others to speak up about boundaries and representation. The ripple effect extended far beyond a single episode. For Fox, the exchange was simply another chapter in a long journey of public life. He continued his work with the same dedication, undeterred by headlines. If anything, the moment reinforced his belief that honesty, even when uncomfortable, drives meaningful change. Viewers revisiting the interview noticed subtleties missed in real time: the pauses, the restraint, the deliberate choice of words. These details painted a picture not of eruption, but of intention. Fox knew exactly what he wanted to communicate, and he did so with clarity. The narrative of outrage gradually softened as fuller clips emerged. Context revealed nuance, and nuance changed perception. What was initially framed as heated became understood as heartfelt. This shift underscored the importance of seeing moments in their entirety. The View, known for spirited debate, had inadvertently hosted one of its more reflective moments. The exchange stood out precisely because it resisted easy categorization. It was neither argument nor performance, but a candid assertion of self. Fox's legacy has always been about more than entertainment. Moments like this reinforced why his voice carries weight. He used visibility not to dominate conversation, but to refine it, reminding audiences that progress is built on mutual respect. As time passed, the interview settled into cultural memory as a turning point rather than a controversy. It represented a growing demand for thoughtful media engagement. Fox had not just reacted, he had redirected. The lasting takeaway was simple yet powerful. Stories involving real lives deserve care. Fox articulated that truth without bitterness, showing that firmness and grace can coexist. His message lingered precisely because it was delivered with humanity. In retrospect, labeling the moment as an eruption misses its essence. It was a correction, a pause in the usual rhythm to ask for better. Fox did not break the conversation, he deepened it, leaving an imprint that extended beyond ratings. The interview ultimately became a reminder that even in controlled spaces, authenticity can break through. Michael J. Fox walked onto the set as a guest, but left having reshaped the dialogue. Not through anger, but through unwavering clarity and respect. Long after the episode aired, Viewers continued dissecting Fox's words, replaying the exchange not for shock value but for meaning. Many noticed how his frustration never turned personal, how he avoided naming blame and instead focused on systems and habits that needed change. That restraint gave his message longevity, allowing people from different perspectives to engage without defensiveness, which is rare in televised confrontations. Online discussions slowly shifted from speculation to reflection, with audiences sharing their own experiences of being reduced to labels in professional and social spaces. Fox's stance resonated deeply because it articulated something many struggle to express: the exhaustion of constantly educating others while managing one's own reality. His calm insistence on respect felt empowering to those who often feel unheard. Media outlets initially chased dramatic headlines, but longer analyses revealed a more layered story. Commentators pointed out that Fox's response wasn't spontaneous outrage but a practiced articulation shaped by years of similar encounters. His ability to respond thoughtfully under pressure highlighted emotional intelligence rather than volatility, challenging the quick-trigger narratives often assigned to such moments. Within advocacy circles, the interview was cited as an example of reclaiming agency without burning bridges. Fox demonstrated that it is possible to confront uncomfortable dynamics while still inviting dialogue. That balance struck a chord, especially among younger advocates learning how to navigate public platforms without compromising their values or being dismissed as overly emotional. The hosts themselves faced renewed scrutiny, prompting internal conversations about interview framing. While none publicly expressed regret, subtle changes in subsequent episodes suggested a growing awareness of tone and phrasing. The ripple effect of Fox's comments quietly reshaped the show's approach, proving that influence doesn't always arrive through confrontation alone. Fox later reflected in a separate appearance that moments like these are inevitable when lived experience meets mass media. He emphasized that discomfort can be productive if it leads to growth. Rather than distancing himself from talk shows, he reiterated his willingness to participate, provided the conversations continue evolving beyond outdated narratives. Fans admired how Fox never positioned himself as a victim, instead asserting himself as an equal participant in the conversation. That distinction mattered. By refusing pity while demanding respect, he challenged the binary often imposed on public figures facing personal challenges. His posture reinforced the idea that strength can look quiet, measured, and deeply intentional. Educators and communicators began referencing the interview in discussions about ethical storytelling. Fox's remarks underscored the responsibility that comes with having a platform, not just to inform but to humanize. The exchange became a teaching moment, illustrating how easily good intentions can miss the mark without active listening. What lingered most was the absence of resolution in the traditional sense. There was no apology segment, no dramatic reconciliation. Instead, there was space left open for viewers to sit with the discomfort. That openness invited interpretation, allowing the moment to live on as a conversation rather than a conclusion. Fox's career has been defined by adaptability, and this moment fits seamlessly into that narrative. He adjusted not by softening his stance, but by sharpening his clarity. His response reflected years of self-awareness, shaped by navigating both admiration and misunderstanding in the public eye. As weeks passed, the interview faded from trending lists but remained present in quieter ways. It resurfaced in podcasts, classrooms, and discussion panels, cited whenever conversations turned to representation and respect. Fox's words proved durable, not because they were loud, but because they were grounded in truth. The incident also highlighted how audiences themselves are changing. Viewers showed increasing impatience with shallow questioning and performative empathy. Fox's pushback aligned with that shift, reinforcing a collective desire for media that treats complexity as an asset rather than a risk. Looking back, the moment felt less like a clash and more like a recalibration. Fox didn't demand special treatment, he asked for thoughtful engagement. That distinction reframed the entire exchange, reminding both hosts and viewers that dignity is not negotiable, even in spaces built for entertainment. For those watching closely, the interview offered a blueprint for speaking up without escalating conflict. Fox modeled how to assert boundaries while remaining open to conversation. His approach suggested that meaningful change often begins with one person choosing honesty over comfort. Ultimately, the legacy of the interview lies not in how heated it became, but in how much it revealed. Michael J. Fox didn't just respond to a question, he articulated a philosophy, one rooted in respect, agency, and the belief that better conversations are always possible when people are willing to listen. As the discussion around the interview matured, many viewers began reassessing how they personally consume media. Fox's response encouraged audiences to question not just the questions being asked, but why certain angles are repeatedly prioritized. The moment quietly challenged the assumption that vulnerability must always be extracted rather than offered voluntarily, shifting responsibility back onto the platforms that shape these conversations. Industry insiders noted that Fox's calm assertiveness disrupted a familiar formula where emotional reactions are often rewarded more than thoughtful ones. By refusing to perform outrage, he denied the moment easy virality, forcing viewers to engage on substance alone. That choice subtly exposed how much modern television depends on heightened emotion rather than meaningful exchange. The interview also sparked renewed discussion about consent in storytelling. Fox's insistence on boundaries highlighted how easily public figures lose control over their own narratives. His words reinforced the idea that sharing one's life should remain a choice, not an obligation imposed by curiosity or ratings-driven agendas. For many living with chronic conditions, Fox's response felt deeply personal. He articulated a frustration that often goes unnamed, the pressure to constantly reassure others, to educate, to inspire, even on days when simply existing takes effort. The validation embedded in his words created a sense of solidarity that extended far beyond celebrity culture. Rather than closing doors, the moment opened new conversations across media platforms. Podcasts, panels, and opinion pieces began examining how interviews could evolve to become more collaborative rather than extractive. Fox's experience became a reference point for how respectful curiosity can replace intrusive questioning without sacrificing depth. What stood out most was Fox's refusal to simplify his message for comfort. He didn't offer any conclusion or an emotional release. Instead, he left viewers with complexity, trusting them to sit with it. That confidence in the audience's intelligence marked a quiet but powerful departure from typical daytime television norms. Observers also noted how Fox's long career informed his response. Decades in the public eye had given him perspective, allowing him to recognize patterns and address them without resentment. His words carried the authority of experience, not just fame, grounding the moment in lived reality rather than abstract debate. The exchange became a reminder that progress often begins with interruption, not the disruptive kind fueled by anger, but the intentional pause that forces reconsideration. Fox didn't derail the conversation, he redirected it, proving that change doesn't always announce itself loudly. Over time, the interview was referenced less as an isolated incident and more as part of a broader cultural shift. Audiences increasingly demanded nuance, and Fox's response aligned perfectly with that demand. The moment reflected evolving expectations for how stories involving real people should be told. Some critics initially questioned whether the exchange had been overanalyzed, yet the sustained interest suggested otherwise. The longevity of the conversation indicated that Fox had tapped into something unresolved, a collective tension between public curiosity and personal dignity that continues to shape media interactions. In reflecting on the moment, many concluded that its power lay in restraint. Fox showed that setting boundaries does not require hostility. His measured delivery demonstrated that clarity can be just as impactful as confrontation, if not more so. Younger viewers, in particular, responded to the authenticity of the exchange. Accustomed to curated personas and scripted responses, they recognized the rarity of unscripted truth. Fox's willingness to speak plainly resonated as both refreshing and instructive. The interview also reframed how resilience is portrayed. Rather than presenting strength as constant optimism, Fox acknowledged complexity, fatigue, and resolve in equal measure. This more honest portrayal challenged outdated narratives that equate resilience with silence or perpetual positivity. As conversations continued, The moment became less about who was right and more about what was learned. Fox had shifted focus away from individual fault and toward collective responsibility, inviting both media professionals and viewers to reflect on their roles in shaping discourse. In the end, the lasting impression was not of conflict, but of clarity. Michael J. Fox used the fleeting television moment to articulate something enduring: that respect, once named and demanded, becomes harder to ignore, and that even within tightly scripted spaces, truth can still find its way through. As the conversation around the interview extended into wider culture, many began pointing out how rare it is to witness a public figure correct a narrative in real time. Fox did not wait for a follow-up interview or a written statement. He addressed the moment as it unfolded. That immediacy gave his words a weight that could not be replicated later, grounding the message in authenticity rather than damage control. Analysts noted that Fox's response subtly redefined what it means to be outspoken on television. Instead of escalating tension, he lowered the temperature while raising the stakes. By choosing precision over provocation, he demonstrated that strength on air does not require dominance, only clarity and self-respect. The interview also exposed how easily intention can be mistaken for impact. While the questions may not have been meant to offend, Fox illuminated how their framing carried unintended consequences. His explanation offered a rare opportunity for viewers to understand how language shapes perception, even when delivered under the banner of empathy. Many viewers later admitted they had never considered how frequently personal struggles are treated as public property. Fox's words disrupted that assumption, reminding audiences that visibility does not cancel the right to privacy. The moment encouraged the reevaluation of how admiration can sometimes blur into entitlement. In media studies discussions, the interview began appearing as a case study in power dynamics. Despite being the guest, Fox reclaimed agency by refusing to be positioned solely as a subject. That shift altered the balance of the exchange, proving that power on television is not fixed but negotiated. What resonated most deeply was Fox's insistence that progress is not passive. He emphasized that awareness alone is insufficient without evolution in behavior and language. His message challenged both creators and consumers to move beyond symbolic support toward genuine understanding. The calm intensity of the moment lingered because it resisted spectacle. There were no raised voices, no dramatic walk-offs, no viral sound bites designed for outrage. Instead, there was substance, delivered steadily, which demanded attention rather than chasing it. For longtime fans, the exchange felt consistent with Fox's public journey. He has always balanced humor with honesty, optimism with realism. This moment simply added another layer, revealing how that balance extends into how he chooses to engage with media narratives. Some viewers described feeling unexpectedly emotional, not because of what was said, but because of how it was said. Fox's composure carried a quiet vulnerability, suggesting that firmness does not negate sensitivity. That combination made the moment feel deeply human. Over time, the interview became less about television and more about communication itself. Fox modeled how to speak up without silencing others, how to assert boundaries without closing dialogue. His approach offered a blueprint applicable far beyond talk shows. The continued relevance of the moment highlighted a broader shift in audience expectations. Viewers increasingly seek conversations that acknowledge complexity rather than flatten it. Fox's response aligned with that desire, reinforcing that depth can be just as engaging as drama. In revisiting the exchange, many noted how Fox never framed himself as exceptional. He spoke not just for himself, but for anyone whose story is often told without consultation. That inclusivity broadened the impact of his words, allowing others to see themselves reflected in his stance. The moment also challenged the idea that advocacy must always be inspirational. Fox rejected the pressure to perform resilience for comfort, instead presenting honesty as its own form of strength. This reframing resonated with those tired of unrealistic narratives. As discussions continued, the interview was increasingly cited as an example of respectful disruption. Fox interrupted a familiar pattern without tearing it down, proving that critique and participation can coexist. That balance made the moment enduring rather than divisive. Ultimately, The exchange stood as a reminder that meaningful change often begins quietly. Michael J. Fox didn't seek to dominate the conversation, he sought to improve it, and in doing so, he left behind not controversy, but the standard, one that continues to shape how people listen, question, and speak.